Namaskar. August 3rd, 2021, Tuesday. Welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree, episode 216. As always, we start with global news. As COVID ravages overburdened COVID hospitals to take only the sickest in Japan, Indonesia extends COVID restrictions again as deaths stay high. China provinces face lockdown amid rise in Delta virus cases. Good morning to you, Sridharji. And looks like COVID's new strain is again having a big impact.
Good morning to everybody on this Tuesday morning on August 3rd. Yes, it is COVID. If it's not politics, politics. So COVID is ravaging Asia, Southeast Asia. They were, unfortunately or fortunately, they seem to be bearing the brunt of it right now, having missed the first wave. And many of the countries are facing the Delta variant, and there's rising cases. All the things that we experienced in the rest of the world, you are beginning to see in places like Japan, Thailand, and so on, which is, many of these people are not, inherently capable of dealing with pandemic and, hospitalization capacities and so on and so forth. That, I mean, everybody experienced it in wave 2 in India, in wave 1 in Europe, etc., etc.
And Australia will provide $68 million to Fiji to assist with airport upgrades amid a wider influence push into the South Pacific region against Beijing's encroaching hegemony. ASEAN struggles to end Myanmar impasse as week of meetings begin as public anger simmers 6 months after takeover. So the general who took over, who said that he will conduct elections again, looks like now he has declared himself as prime minister. Very, very typical playbook, sir.
I think it's a typical playbook in terms of the Myanmar story. But let us see, because he seems to have good connections into the ASEAN leadership. And what ASEAN is saying, somehow if they can persuade him to hold elections in 6 months, they can have an amicable settlement and move on. It's a very complicated process in terms of imposing sanctions within the ASEAN. It's a group where they brought Myanmar in. If you recall, Myanmar was given a significant amount of importance. There also have been an ASEAN show in Myanmar. So I think they're hoping that they can integrate as the protests continue to rise. Now, with regard to the Pacific, if you recall, both in Tahiti and other regions of Pacific, there has been either Australia or Japan, or even for that matter, France, investing to prevent these underground cable companies being, utilizing the Chinese companies and Chinese technologies. So Australia is stepping up its ante and then has invested 64 million, which is great news.
And popular protests, violent crackdowns puts Biden and Obama Iran peace agenda to test, from nuke deal to human rights in Iran. Iran warns against retaliation by Israel. This is for the drone attack. And Russian envoy places blame on Iran for nuclear stalemate. So the first one where there are protests and riots, this is happening inside Iran, isn't it?
This is happening in many provinces within Iran. This is against the human rights crackdown. This is against a lot of prevailing economic conditions and the oppressive regime. And this guy, the new president, is likely to be more fundamentalist rather than less fundamentalist. So there is, rising pro-democracy protests happening inside Iran. So that's one facet of the story. The second facet of the story is their continuous using their, renegade forces, or the guerrillas, or whatever you want to call the warriors, persistent attacks around the region, which we call it as Three Eyes. And the latest was on the Mercer Street, which is the commercial ship, which resulted in 2 crew members' death. And Iran has basically said it will not accept any retaliation, and it will respond. Then you have the third thing that is going on, which is namely the nuclear deal. It's amazing that Russia has stepped up and stated that the stalling of the negotiation of the deal, Iran is responsible. Now, this whole thing we call as the JCPOA, This deal was stitched by Obama. Why we are discussing Iran? Because the reason is the present regime feels that they have to go back to the deal when Iran has done nothing but other than being very belligerent and continuing to do defying the rules enrichment of uranium. And I think we again covered in Daily Global Insights, they're very close or very short of coming up with a nuclear weapon. So I think that this Russian statement is a very important statement.
Boris Johnson faces backlash over vaccine passports from his own party. Poland grants visa to Belarus athletes seeking asylum. This is very interesting. Belarus has been having problems politically. Now, is it transpiring that some of the people representing the country in Olympics want to seek asylum in Poland, sir?
That is what it looks like. Many of the people who found the first opportunity to get out of Belarus, they say that, hey, we need to, if there's a way by we can get out, we'll get out. Because again, it's a regressive regime which is backed by the Russians continuing to live. You recall that we again covered in Daily Global Insights that when they even stopped a plane carrying two journalists who wrote against the regime, and then those guys were, deplaned from from the flight. So I think so. You have this issue propping up. It's very amazing. This is used to happen when you have, Cold War. People from the Eastern European side trying to seek asylum and not going back, and then the war of words between. So that seems to now be prevalent in as far as the Belarus is concerned. Boris Johnson is facing a backlash because many of these people don't want these vaccine passports, but UK is number 2 in the world. I mean, people, we can keep on saying this, number 2 in the world in terms of active cases. Close to 1 million active cases in Britain, and they want their freedom, and they do not want to have all these identity badges, carrying on, to be taken with them. This is Boris Johnson facing backlash from his own party. Leave alone from people. His own party people are saying, no, this is right. This is violation of right. We're not agreeing to it.
And US news, no evidence of any wrongdoings as Trump fights release of tax returns and says that the House is on an unwarranted fishing expedition. Your thoughts, sir?
Yes, I think that, President Trump has time till Wednesday. The judge had given a time to contest this requirement. And I think he's making his case. He's basically saying, it's my tax returns and, I've filed, I've done no harm. Why are you looking into it? Now, this Nancy Pelosi, they are trying to find Nancy Pelosi and co. They are trying to find every which way that is possible to figure out something, in Trump's, armory or kit, which they think they can use it. If you remember, 2 cases which they have not pursued. Our great man in Andrew Cuomo here in Manhattan is not the governor of New York, not pursued. There's more than 10, 12, 13 people complaining about his issues. Hunter Biden's computer fairly locked up, tucked away somewhere. He's now in odd deal. Is gone, is not pursued. And some of the investigations around the connections to COVID not pursued, but they want Trump's tax returns.
And evidence proves the virus that caused the COVID-19 pandemic leaked from a Chinese research facility, according to a report by US Republicans released on Monday. The report also cited ample evidence that Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV, scientists, aided by US experts and Chinese and US government funds, were working to modify coronaviruses to infect humans, and such manipulation could be hidden. This is the gain of function that has been talked about. There is a United Kingdom report that shows that this pandemic has alarming consequences with the potency not treatable by vaccines. We are talking about the new variant, I guess, Delta, and people are talking about another one coming down the pipeline, which they're calling it Lambda. Sir, why is it that the Democrats refuse to accept this? After all, everybody is, pandemic is not partisan, sir. It picks up everyone.
It's very interesting. We should ask the President Obama to make a statement, because some of these things point towards that specific date around that period. So he should come out in public and say, he's a president. He's very, he's willing to campaign for the Democrats. He's willing to talk about the progressive agenda, etc. He should say, hey, you know what happened during during that specific phase. He should make a statement, which is to say that, hey, something happened or nothing happened. So it's very clear that according to the detail, it was a press by I forget the name of the Republican senator or Republican House rep who issued the report. It's now fairly public, and it is very well covered, which shows that there was a close linkage. It also shows that Fauci has not denied it, that U.S. Health and Institute of Virology, HIV, has funded this specific research. So if so, why many of these things are not coming out? It begs the question. And you saw Rand Paul go after Dr. Fauci on the same topic. So now more and more evidence points to the issue going directly back to that specific lab, and probably some of the people being involved from here. Nobody is alleging that any intent of crime, but everybody is saying there was information, and why that information has not been released in the public interest. That's it. Now, this UK report, we have not examined in Daily Global Insights, but we will do more. But apparently that UK report says there are viruses, that are in the plan or in the research that they have seen. Some of them have potency that it can't be treated by vaccine. Should that be the case, that this is not going to go away? In other words, this research has one big headline, which is to say that this virus is here forever with us, unless something different comes out. This particular report, this was tweeted yesterday. It's available. If you can go and look at the Twitter, and then look for this report, you may find it. But we haven't done the full analysis. But one of the days we will share the findings.
Yes, indeed. And White House sees a rising COVID-19 uptake as Delta variant rips through the states. I'm going to put up the chart now, sir. And this is going to be a video that's going to be running for a bit. But you can, we'll just wait for this to run for a few seconds, and then I will put you back on, sir. Please continue, sir.
So if you see this chart that, Sree has put up on the screen, one of the key highlights is, look at the column called active cases. When you look at the column, this is the Indian chart that you're seeing. We'll get to that in a second.
Right.
Okay, so when you look at the active cases in United States, there's close to 5.5 million active cases. That's a significant number of active cases. And when you look at the new cases, roughly close to 49,000 new cases you see on your screen. So we have seen in the United States in the past 1 week, 45 to 49,000 daily new cases prop up. And which are the states which top this list? The states that top, California is nearly approaching 1.8 million, close to 2 million active cases, or in the Indian terms, close to 20 lakhs active cases in one single state. And then you have Virginia having 628,000, then Maryland having 446. Florida is also 307,000. Paul Krugman wrote a piece yesterday just picking up Florida, because in the top 10, this happens to be one of the red states, which is very prominent. And red state was one of the states which said, no vaccination, no mandatory vaccination, and no mask. But this just is an alarming number, and more than 60% of this is is Delta variant. So that's on the US. Coming to the Indian side, India saw this chart that you see is that India is approaching close to 500 million vaccines, the first dose vaccine, which is about, which is quite a remarkable number. It's around somewhere around 470 or 472 million right now as we speak. Today, as of yesterday, they had close to 6 million vaccines. The number that you may see is about 1.7. That is only partly refreshed. But the other heartening news for India is, for the first time, the number of active cases is less than the discharge cases, which has brought the number to that 4 lakhs or 404 or 405,000 number. But India still has to be on the alert because 3 or 4 states is making up the big numbers. So this COVID is a big issue.
And President Biden's 1.2 trillion infrastructure package carves out broad exemptions for Buy American mandates. So this would this be like made in USA brand promotion?
Yes, made in USA brand promotion. There was a threshold of 55%. They're increasing it to about 60%. But what I'm also hearing is that they constantly have abused and violated. There are 2 exemptions to this rule. One exemption, if there's a little bit of a scarcity of specific raw material, whether it is steel, whether it is iron, whether it is construction materials, then they can bypass this. That's one. The second is also when there is an asymmetric demand, you can bypass this. This is one of the reasons why United States has gone down the gurgle or gone down the tubes, and we lost significant segments of the industry. So the carve-out sounds good on paper, but doesn't sound very good when it's actually on a reality.
And Democratic state legislators to converge on Capitol Hill to demand passage of voting bill. The Biden administration signaled Monday that it plans to keep the so-called Title 42 coronavirus border shutdown in place a little longer, dashing hopes of immigrant rights advocates. Progressive activist groups, I should say regressive, have renewed calls for a new probe into Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and his possible impeachment. The group is demanding that further FBI investigation is necessary. Sir, first off, what happened to the group that came from Texas, sir? These guys had contacted COVID. Are they still holed up in Washington, D.C.?
They are still holed up in Washington, D.C. They do not want to go back, but probably, no pun intended. They want to be generous and socialize it because they're socialists with the rest of the members. And there's 27 states, close to 150 people are Democratic legislators are likely to descend on Tuesday, which is today, in Washington, D.C. to march. So these 50 people would join that and talk about, we need the election reform. We need the voting reform. What is voting reform? Nationalization of elections. Okay, this is going to bite. Okay, if it happens, it will bite the Democrats. They don't recognize it because what happens to Democrats when they lose power? It is Republicans who will be in power. They will have the same ability when they control House and Senate to rewrite the laws, because we want to rewrite every law that we have written. Go forward, go backward, go forward, backward. So that's number one. Number two, they want no voter ID. So voter ID is to be, if you demand voter ID, it is incorrect. So they somehow feel, how can there be constitutionality and equality? Constitutionality applies to citizens. Constitutionality doesn't apply to every visitor who comes into this country or every visitor who comes into the country to stay on. This, complete, utter nonsense, but they feel this is the way they can control. And you can see this, Cubans are kicked out, whereas those who come from Central Asia are allowed. Why? Maybe Cubans.
Central America.
Huh?
Central America.
Central America. Yes. So those, whatever the delineations are. Anyway, let's move to the next one, which is the point around the one that you made around
nearly 2 million households owe close to 15 billion, B as in boy, 15 billion in back rents as per reports. So I think now the point is Nancy Pelosi wants a moratorium on all the evictions extended, but White House is not thinking of doing that. So there is a clash, looks like, between the Democrats, within the Democrats themselves. Your thoughts, sir?
A moratorium has been by CDC has bypassed it. Biden has bypassed it. It's over. So therefore, it's done. So they have no support from their own party. They have no support from CDC. They have no support from Mr. Biden. So it's done and dusted. So one important point on the on this what they call. I was just looking for that specific clause, which is the Title 42. Title 42 is effectively when somebody crosses the border, if he found to be having COVID or any disease or ailment, then he will be denied entry. So Biden is supporting that. Whether it will be implemented remains to be seen. With regard to Kavanaugh, it's very important, this particular one. Kavanaugh was intensely contested his nomination to Supreme Court. There was this issue that he assaulted a lady while in school or college, and Trump administration did investigation and passed on, but the Democrats feel the investigation was incomplete. The FBI must pursue, and he must be impeached. And if he's impeached and removed, then that means that they have an opportunity to replace that particular person, and that can swing the composition of the Supreme Court. It's an important point to discuss, just as the Trump tax issue.
Couple of things, sir. One is, has a Supreme Court judge ever been impeached before? I don't know if you know the answer to that. We can look up and tell you tomorrow. The second question, sir, is the Florida governor's performance as bad as being portrayed in the US media? One of our regular watchers, Mr. Lee, wants to know.
Florida performance has been is extremely good, but this is the targeted agenda they're going after. Why is
remember Modi of 2002 to 2012, what used to happen?
Yeah, why he's targeted? Very simple. He is emerging as a strong contender to be presidential nominee in case Trump chooses one way or the other way. And so he's also been very silent. Originally, he was supposed to be the deputy. Now he is not deputy. He is silent on that. So he has administered the state very well. So they're targeting him. Mismanagement, this, that, and so on. But the fact of the life is, you look at the industry is moving from New York to Florida. And so therefore, who you target? You target DeSantis. Why not you target all other? Why not you target Californian governor? Why not you target New York governor? Why not you target Chicago? the Illinois? No, you don't, because they happen to be progressives. This is, United States and India is effectively mirror images of each other. Now, only thing that was left was this, this skimming and the voting fraud and all this, numbers, what you call making up the numbers in one way or the other. Now, that has also entered this scene in the United States. Media has entered the scene. Targeting of people has entered the scene. So if you're looking at the oldest and the largest democracy, it reflects an identical state of affairs on all such matters that make difference in terms of acquiring power.
Yes, and I might also add that one should not rule out Mike Pompeo from being a possible candidate for president in 2024. Because if we look back, and we are going to publish a couple of interviews in the next few days with Elmer Yuen, and you will see what is happening on the backside, what is happening on the other side, how a part-time actor went on to become a big monster that is Xi Jinping today. Very interesting video. Do watch that. And now let's go on to India news. Modi to address UN sessions virtually on maritime security issues. Dr. Jaishankar, who will be in person in New York and will chair sessions on technology and peacekeeping, and will be discussing strategic level report on ISIS. Dr. Jaishankar will also represent India at the Iran President Raisi's oath-taking ceremony. Looks like India was invited. Sir, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think, the maritime security, which is the front, center, and the back of Indian Ocean, South China Sea, Pacific, extending all the way up to Djibouti and Gulf of Aden. So you have Modi taking up that issue quite rightly. India has been given some specific responsibility, so it's the right issue. Dr. Jaishankar is focused on some of the ISIS as well as usage of technology with the advent of drones. The invitation of Iranian government shows that there's still a trust and relationship, very strong relationship that India enjoys with some of these nations.
And Indian exports are up 47.91% in July to 35.17 billion. Imports surge 59%. India's manufacturing growth sees the strongest manufacturing growth from 48.1% to 55.3% in Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index. India sets an ambitious exports target with new foreign trade policy targeting 1 trillion by fiscal year 2026. It must grow at compound aggregated growth rate, CAGR, of 15% against past 5 years growth rate of 5%. Gross GST collections continue to rise, pointing to a robust recovery as unemployment rate falls to 6.95% in July. So your thoughts?
So my thoughts are that first and foremost, India is recovering out of the pandemic. We discussed it a little bit yesterday. All these numbers point to the fact that that there is a momentum relative to the corresponding period. I just want to add, relative to the corresponding period during pandemic. In pandemic, there was contraction. So if these percentages look exaggerated, these percentages are compared relative to the corresponding period previous year. So when we come to next year, the normalization will happen, because then we will know whether the growth is at 59 or 10 or 12%, as the case may be. But the good news is India is on the move. As far as the export target of 1 trillion is concerned, we have discussed it. The bilateral trade with US itself, there people are targeting $500 billion. Whether they achieve at 15% CAGR or whether they achieve at 5% CAGR, today it's at 5%, it doesn't matter, but they have set a target and they're going after. Immediately people will descend and say they will not achieve 15. You have a target and you go after. If you land at 8% or 9%, you are much better than where you are today. And eventually 1 trillion, which will make up 20% of the 5 trillion, whenever it reaches that number, is a good outcome, because you have a blended economy, consumption and exports.
And at the e-rupee launch, PM Modi says government saves 1.7 lakh crores via direct transfer of subsidies. This has been one of the best things that the Modi government has accomplished, because there are no leakages, no seepages. Many of us remember growing up when Rajiv Gandhi used to say that out of 100 paisa that the government sets out to give its citizens, only 15 used to reach the citizens, because those are the middlemen that the Congress system had encouraged. Now, all of it goes because it's direct transfer of subsidies. India nears 500 million vaccine doses as it battles Delta variant in select states. You did see the chart that we put up. Sridharji, I'm going directly to markets because you're running a little bit late. As the economy hits its peak, markets finished lower today. The infrastructure bill could target crypto markets, rocking it further. Sir, you have something to say about this infrastructure bill and how it could be affecting crypto markets?
The infrastructure bill is targeting, now they've said that they need revenue, because the infrastructure bill is about expenses. $1.2 trillion of deficit, $1.2 trillion right now, with a $3.5 trillion reconciliation in the reconciliation budget in the offing. So which simply implies they must find sources of revenue. The sources of revenue are they're finding wherever they can find the taxes. Oh, lo and behold, we now go to crypto. So we'll go to crypto. This is Janet Yellen herself, and says she has stated, in my view, it's good news. It's bad news and good news. The bad news is $28 billion they're targeting on crypto trades. So what's the good news? The good news is we have stated before that it is not from hero to zero, but it is going from zero to superhero. Why it is going to superhero? Because the reason is, hey, now we're going to tax you. You do more trades, so we'll tax you. So it's going mainstream. And today, it's not Gary Gensler would be speaking at the SEC forum in Aspen Institute. He's the SEC chair, and he is saying that he wants the exchanges and trades to be under tighter oversight, and he wants regulation to come in. He himself has taught crypto, and he also feels that he has been silent on what happens to the ETFs, exchange traded funds on crypto. He said that that's also will be reviewed. So which all means that crypto is going mainstream. Whether it is $100,000 Bitcoin, whether it is $50,000, doesn't matter, but it's going to be mainstream.
And Treasury to deploy extraordinary measures after Congress misses the debt ceiling deadlines. This is another joke that gets played out on, it's a cruel joke, in fact, that gets played out on the American public. They'll start shutting down non-essential government functions, and poor people who are working on such projects, for example, if there's a NASA contract that is being deployed, they'll miss the payment on the next schedule, and many of those people will be furloughed. They won't get benefits. It's just a mess. These people are irresponsible. They think money grows on trees when it comes to allocating money. But when this comes to this silly exercise, just get rid of the debt ceiling. Why do you even have to have it? Anyway, you're borrowing against I don't know what. Our younger generations, the next generation is going to get burdened like crazy anyway. So why have this charade? That's how I see it, sir. Debt ceiling deadline is a charade. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think that we are going down a very what you call open borders, open access, open sesame. No borders, everybody is allowed. No identity, everybody is allowed to vote. Borrow till cows come home, no debt ceiling limits. So therefore, we will be running a kangaroo country very soon in United States. So we can borrow till nobody needs to repay. We don't need to have anybody checking at the borders. Anybody can come. We don't need to have any ID. Anybody can go and vote. Very soon, anybody can be in Capitol Hill and anybody can do anything. There's nobody to question. That's the state of affairs in the United States. It's not a very, very positive feeling here, but there is, when you look at the crimes, when you look at all these specific issues that are going on, it makes a mockery of the democracy that we think is very precious in terms of governance.
And let's take a quick look at markets, which are doing extremely well. Sir, I have the Dow market up. You can see it, I guess.
The markets are down yesterday. They were up. They were down 100 points. The futures are up. So Dow was down 100 points. And Brent is great news. Is oils is within the $75 band. So that is an extremely, that's a very positive news. Now, when you see the next chart, it will be staggering. The bond market, yes, 1.17% is 10-year yield. 1.17% is the best time to borrow. And you look at the Japanese and you look at the Deutsche, then you can see their rates, especially the European one is negative, and the Japanese is very close to 0%. Sir, so this is the time to borrow, sir. So I think that I don't know why people don't want to borrow. This is the time to borrow and make a buck on real estate. And if we can hold 1.18, I mean, that's an amazing rate, and when the economy is on the up. So that's what I would say. I'm sorry I was a little controversial on on your observation around the debt ceiling. So I think debt ceiling is required. Otherwise, there will be no checks and balances.
So you are a banker, sir. You are going to say that. You like numbers. You need left-hand side to meet with the right-hand side. What I am saying, I'm saying it in a very sarcastic way.
Yeah.
That, these regressives have no idea. They probably can't count beyond their fingers. I'm sorry. Because you just keep throwing numbers, 3 trillion for this, that, and this, and then it says it's supposed to go into US infrastructure, and then money is being, allocated for Palestine and other stuff. That doesn't make sense. If you want to set aside money for that, say so, get it separately passed in the Congress. Anyway, you have the majority in both states. Let it come out of that. Why try to hide it somewhere else? That's my point, sir. With this, we bring to an end today's episode. We'll be back again tomorrow, bright and early. As always, Sridharji, namaskar, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Namaskar, and thank you so much. It was a good session.